Well, I know the name of the video is The End of GM, which probably isn't true, although who knows, by the time you see this video, maybe it will have been the end of GM. But as far as I'm concerned, it's the end of GM for me. I'm sitting in my garage here where my 2018 Chevy Colorado used to be parked. And I purchased that truck brand new less than a year ago in August of 2018. And within less than 1,000 miles, I started to notice a shudder in the drivetrain. And at first I just blew it off, thinking that it's the road surface, because it felt like you're driving over shallow rumble strips. And I never gave it a thought that my brand new truck would have a transmission issue. My experience with GM products of 30, 35 years ago were that they've had pretty good transmissions, and I had numerous GM products that had the 350 engine and the 350 turbo-hydromatic transmission and never had any problems with either one. And if you had the turbo-hydromatic 400 transmission, that was even stronger. So I never give it a thought that my brand new truck would have a transmission issue. Well, it turns out that problem got worse. You could feel the shudder more pronounced, and it was definitely something wrong with the drivetrain. So I had decided to do a little research online about the issue, and it took me no time at all finding that this particular transmission, the 8-speed automatic transmission, and I had the V6, 3.6 liter V6, that it was a known issue that this 8-speed transmission has shudders issues, and it goes back not only to the 2017 model year, so it had 2017, 2018, it also stretched into the 2019 model year, as people were reporting the shudder issue with the 2019s also. Bear in mind that this doesn't just cover the Colorado, it's any GM product that uses the 8-speed transmission. So there are numerous other vehicles that GM makes that uses this 8-speed transmission, and they would be susceptible to this shudder issue also. Well, I had called customer service, and that was a very frustrating experience, because when you call the 800 number that GM provides for customer service, you're actually talking to an offshore clearinghouse that all they're doing is making note of your issue, and then they try and connect you up for somebody to talk to you or take care of the issue. And my experience is that nobody ever would get back to me, or when they would get back to me, they'd say, yes, we understand, and they had no answers for me, or when a fix was coming. And I did finally get it into the dealership and had them look at it, and yes, you do have the shudder. And at that time, the fix was a torque converter replacement. And they tried other things, not the dealership, but GM had been trying other things up to this point to fix this shudder, and it hadn't worked, so now they were at the point of replacing torque converters. Well, mine was scheduled for the week, I can't remember the week, in December, but the week that it was scheduled, they called me and said that they were no longer replacing torque converters. GM had decided that that wasn't fixing the issue, and that everything was on hold. So here I am stuck with a brand new truck, and it's got this shudder issue, and I have to continue driving it like this, and GM has no idea when they're going to come up with a fix or find a fix for it, or how it's going to happen. So I was very disgusted with this whole thing, and by that point I had made enough phone calls and rattled enough cages, including FedExing letter to GM Direct to get somebody's attention, that I was given an executive liaison in Detroit to contact rather than go through this offshore clearinghouse, as they are no help at all, because all they're doing is making note of your issue, and they can't really help you with anything. They buck it on to Detroit, and then somebody goes from there to hopefully get back to you to address your issue. So anyways, I did get the executive liaison, so I had a little more direct contact. I actually had an email address I could email, and a number to call. You'd usually get voicemail, but at least I could leave voicemail and actually get to talk to somebody in Detroit to deal direct with my problem. So the bottom line is that the fix was supposed to be coming out the first quarter of 2019, and this fix involved flushing out the old transmission fluid and replacing it with some new mobile synthetic fluid that they supposedly had developed that was supposed to work in this transmission and take care of the shudder. Well, I had that done, I believe it was around the first or second week in February of 2019, and I believe the truck at that point maybe had 4,000 miles or thereabouts on it. And it did seem to take care of the shudder, and that problem seemed to be taken care of. But in the meantime, along come March or thereabouts, I noticed some fluid on the garage floor, and I just thought, well, maybe they didn't get something tight when they were doing the transmission fluid change. And I crawled underneath the truck, and no, it had nothing to do with the transmission. I determined that it was the front differential. The pinion seal was leaking on the front differential. This was a 4x4, Z71 4x4, so it had the front and rear differential. And I tracked down the leak to the seal, and it was running down from the seal and dripping off a cross member, as you know, everything goes down the lowest point, and dripping on my garage floor. Well, I knew what it was, but you have to play the game again, take it in, get it diagnosed, just like I had to do with the transmission shudder issue, which for me is kind of problematic because I live an hour and 20 minutes one way from the dealership, so I have to drive there, drive back, not only my time, but then mileage too, driving back and forth, to have them diagnose it, which I already know it's a leaky seal. But anyways, you take it in, and I made the appointment, took it in. And yes, in fact, sir, you do have a leaky pinion seal, leaking pinion seal. And that wasn't the worst part of it, though. They do their 21-point inspection, or whatever they call it. And the advisor was talking to me about the inspection and said, oh, and by the way, sir, you have a leaky rear brake caliper seal on the right rear side. And I says, what? I didn't even go into why my pinion seal is leaking because I had a pretty good idea. That's just poor installation at the time that the truck was built, because I don't know of any other way that a pinion seal would be leaking on a truck that doesn't even have 7,000 miles on it. And it's never been off-road. It's a 4x4, quote-unquote off-road Z71 package. I think that's just a name. I don't think it gives it very much more ability to go off-road than a normal 4x4. But at any rate, I'd never had it off-road. In fact, I'd only used the four-wheel drive a few times over the winter. I live in a northern climate where we do get pretty good snow, so 4x4 or all-wheel drive is handy. But I'd only used it a handful of times, even engaging the four-wheel drive. So I never thought that I'd have a leaking pinion seal. Yeah, just like I never thought I'd have a bad transmission, but apparently this truck is turning into a nightmare as far as things going wrong. So they did tell me that, okay, you have a leaky caliper seal on top of the pinion seal. And I said, well, what would cause a caliper seal to be leaking on a truck this new? And this is when the technician shared with me, well, I used to work in a GM parts factory before I got this advisor job here, and 85 to 90% of the parts going out the door are good, and the other, what's left, may be bad. So, boy, there's a real confidence vote for you, for your GM, when you hear something like that coming right from a service advisor. So, anyways, the more I'm hearing, the more ticked off I'm getting. And then it comes to the point of, okay, well, we'll schedule you to fix the pinion seal, and then you'll have to come back and have the brake caliper seal fixed. And I says, no, I don't want to do that. I live an hour and 20 minutes away. And then that's when the truth comes out, is they can't even get the parts to fix the brake caliper seal. I don't know if they wanted to replace the seal or the whole caliper. To me, you just put in a new caliper. It's not like it's a bazillion-dollar part. They couldn't even get that part for 10 to 21 days. And at this point, I just walked out totally disgusted. It's a common brake part. A brake caliper is not like some obscure part that you're trying to fix on a vehicle that's plus it's a common truck, Colorado. It's not a new model. It's been out. I think this is by 2018. This is the 5th year of this generation. So parts should be very available in the pipeline at this point, and especially something as basic as a brake caliper. Well, I waited. It was like 10 days, and I got a call from the service advisor saying, "Well, sir, we're sorry, but the parts are still on back order." And by now, I'm totally ticked. I'm not mad at them. I know it's not their fault, but I'm ticked at GM, and I feel kind of sorry for these people that work at GM and are service advisors, especially when they can't get parts in a timely manner for basic fixes. At any rate, I did look online myself just to see, well, can I even get a brake caliper I looked up, tried to find a rear brake caliper for the truck, and I would look for an AC Delco to make it an OEM part, and I couldn't even get that part until they were predicting a shipment date of the 5th of August. Now, I had the truck in, I believe it was July 13th. It was actually on a Saturday, but they still could diagnose. They had a technician to do a diagnosis. Obviously, no work was done outside of oil changes and the simple things on a weekend, but they did have a technician to do diagnosis. And so it was from July 13th that they said 10 to 21 days, and my research looking for the part myself was showing a minimum of August 5th for a ship date on an AC Delco brake caliper, and I couldn't even find an aftermarket one much sooner than that could be shipped. So there was something definitely going on. I don't know whether they had a bad run of brake calipers or if they're all failed at the same time and it just dried up the pipeline, but at any rate, there weren't any brake calipers to be had for my GM Colorado, or my Chevy Colorado. And it was another 2 weeks, I believe, 14 days later, they called again, letting me know that there still weren't any brake calipers available and the parts were back ordered. But by this time, I went around. They are also, my dealership was not only a GM dealership, they also had another branch that was a Toyota dealership. And I'm completely fed up now, and I had went over to them with my truck and arranged to trade off this truck and buy a Toyota Tacoma. And even to the week that I picked up my Tacoma, I was still getting calls from the service department at the Chevy dealership saying that the part was still back ordered, and this, I believe, was stretching into 3 weeks now. And I'd actually called them and told them that I had traded the truck and no longer had it, so they didn't have to worry about it. I told the Toyota salesman when I bought it, he asked why I was getting rid of it, and I says, well, it's had problems from the get-go, and they can't even get parts to fix it, and I've had it. So I said it's kind of awkward to go over there and tell them that I've gotten rid of the truck over at the other dealership, at the Toyota dealership. And he says, oh, we have it all the time. People trade in their vehicles, and we have it all the time. And we'll actually get a hold of them and let them know that they don't have to worry about getting the parts anymore. So that was that. I got rid of the truck, and now I have a Toyota Tacoma. And here's the end of GM for me. And my prediction with GM is if they don't get their act together, they're going to go bankrupt again. And as far as the consumer market goes, they're going to be done. I don't believe there will be another government bailout this time. And they may stay in business making larger trucks and commercial vehicles. But it could very well be the end of GM as we know it. And for me it is. And I can't see how they can stay in business if they're producing crappy products, and then the crappy products break and you can't even get parts to keep you on the road. So that's it for me, and I hope you find some valuable information here. If not, it's just ramblings, and that from me, and that's kind of what I do here is ramble, and so be it.